What's going on, gang? Coach Joe here to talk to you a little bit about Performa Sleep. Guys, Performa Sleep has worked with industry experts to develop the ideal mattress for athletes and active people looking to improve their performance through better sleep. Guys, Performa Sleep is proud to say that every single Performa Sleep mattress is made in the USA and ships quickly from their warehouse to your door, and hopefully gets in your bedroom pretty quick. Guys, I sleep on a Performa Sleep mattress. I absolutely love it. It's the only mattress on the market with copper cool technology, and I can say right now, as a guy who sleeps hot, who sleeps with the sweats, I don't anymore in my Performa Sleep mattress. Check it out. Folks like myself, like Dr. Danny, Lauren Fisher, Emily Bridgers, Scott Panchek are on the Performa Sleep mattress, and I have nothing but great things to say about it. So head over to performasleep.com and click their big red Buy Now button and enjoy. What's going on, gang? Doc and Jock Podcast. Coach Joe here, hanging out with Ben Crookston of Train Heroic. Dr. Danny is not here, so Ben, I thought it would be cool to do something we have never done before, and something in the dark days when I'm bored and lonely and I'm sweeping the floor and I'm dealing with the kids. I actually love listening to right-wing radio. I get fired up about it, and I am completely. We're going to get right into this. So when you meet someone new, you should never just talk politics. So I'm going to put you
with politics and with religion.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do that. So we're going to start with politics. But I am completely floored today with Danny not putting the brakes on this. I'm going to go for it. But I'm amazed by this Trump effect, and I actually wrote a blog post not too long ago about Donald Trump being orange, and it's because he's vitamin D deficient. So it's an interesting post, but I'm so floored by his approach to politics. So the latest thing is, I guess him and Hillary are having a back and forth about him making a mess of the housing crisis and almost saying it wanted to happen. But long story short, he called her a lowlife. And I guess my question to you is, political view aside, where I'm not interested in if you're right or left or who you favor, if you like him. What do you think of his general tactics in terms of just turning politics upside down by resorting to like name calling and just kind of coming at these folks?
Well, I think it's proving to be wildly effective. And so what we might say about Mr. Trump is that he takes feedback well, and simple fact of the matter that the audience continues to swell and the votes continue to come in. I think he's just accelerating and jamming on the gas to see how far he can push that thing.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me, and you talk to I guess the Trump loyalists, and it doesn't seem to matter if he flip-flops on this or says that, or if he can backpedal on whatever. But folks seem to really be following this. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I do love right-wing radio, and their I heard a guy today just talking about this is like apocalyptic, and it's the end of the country, and some of these guys talking about how he's going to bring down the Constitution. Do you really think that one guy's run at president really matters that much? Do you think it can really change the landscape of the country that big? I mean, how big a deal do you really think the president's role is?
I think that's probably the central issue, right?
Yeah.
I think in fact, we were chatting about this the other day, and I think there's two things. Either one, this job truly is not that impactful, and it doesn't matter that much, and the call to arms to bring forth great men and women to try to lead in this role is honestly just not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Because or it's so disincentivized to actually lead in this country, and we've somehow skewed, the value system such that there's really no reward and all downside to being the president, that all the talent, which we have kind of the top 1% of 1% in this country, chooses not to even participate in the race.
Yeah, it's so funny you bring that up, because that's something I've always thought of. And I'm like, in my mind, I grew up idolizing football coaches. Love Bear Bryant. Woody Hayes, some of those maniacs. And to me, the leadership, Vince Lombardi, those guys, like I've always looked at politicians and I'm like, well, why aren't the guys who are coaching football, why aren't they leading the country? You know what I mean? So it's interesting that you bring that up. It's something that's always kind of, it's intrigued me that, we demand such high standards from basketball coaches at the Division I level. When any of these guys have anything come up on their record, we want to rip them off their pedestal. But then again, when we look at a politician, whether it's Hillary or Donald Trump, we know they have speckled pasts. We almost expect them to be liars and to lie, cheat, and steal. So it's interesting to me that we'll put up with it from the people who are going to lead our country, but we won't put up with it from folks who are, leading young men or young women on a competitive field. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's spot on. And, I think it's a thing at this point. Again, does it come down to everybody knows the dirty secret that being the president truly doesn't actually make a difference?
Sure.
And therefore we're actually more apt and more prone to actually point towards things that we think do influence our daily lives. People kind of like to go back and forth, and they're going to post on Facebook and they're going to go on tirades, pro-Trump, against Trump, pro-Hillary, against Hillary. Not that many pro-Hillarys that I see, which is also a weird deal. This is kind of like the other thing that totally blew me away within the last month. It's been interesting seeing kind of these two front runners come to the fold.
And no one likes them.
And nobody gives a shit about these people.
Yeah, that's right.
And on top of that, no less than 3 months ago, I almost felt like this real sense of pride and hope for our country, because I was like, man, for once, these two parties, they're coming together. And
Sure.
People are uniformly talking shit about all the candidates that we have.
Sure.
And we were saying, hey, there's nobody good.
Yep.
But now that it's kind of this two-person race, it's like, okay, yep, back to the old methods. Let's take sides. Let's point fingers. Let's talk shit to each other. And oddly enough, there seem to be people who are advocating on behalf of one of these candidates when it seems to be they're advocating on behalf of their party, by which they probably didn't put too much thought into in the first place.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing. So you bring up, what matters in life, and we know, it's just going to be a pretty nasty segue, but we gave politics, good 6.5 minutes, but we won't bore you guys anymore. We'll get into why we brought Ben onto the show, but to what really matters is kind of like looking good naked and performing your ass off, right? So we talked to Ben. Ben's a pretty solid guy. He's got a great platform here.
Joe, I like that smooth transition, by the way.
That was
not that you've ever seen me naked, man, but thanks for the obtuse little endorsement there.
No, that's it. Well, that's why, the secret thing here with training, Ben, as I get older, it's a matter of, sure, I like to perform and, I'm still competitive in weightlifting, but when it comes down to it, I'm going to pursue a means that's also going to help me look pretty good. And I think with most Americans, when it comes down to it, when you chip away at why they're training, underneath it all, I think that's a big part of it. That's just an opinion, but you have a great platform. You have a great background. I want to get back to who Ben is here. You got some cool things going on. You guys are in Boulder, Colorado. So talk to the audience of just about who you are, what's your training background, and just kind of give us the synopsis of how you started this Train Heroic platform.
Right on. So Train Heroic's a strength and conditioning platform. We work with anybody from your run-of-the-mill, low-income high school all the way up to the Cleveland Cavaliers, still in the playoffs, and several hundred CrossFit gyms, and quickly growing in that segment too.
Has Cleveland lost a playoff game yet?
They have. They took a tumble twice, so
Okay.
we're a bit nervous, rooting for our guys. But yes, my background from a training perspective, which is completely different from my background in a life perspective, I would say I came from the school of I had no idea what to do, so I maxed out every day. In fact, in high school, not knowing what to do, but knowing I really wanted to go somewhere and be something, like any hormone charged 14-year-old. I maxed out my back squat and my bench press every day. Nice. And I ran 40 yard dashes. It was viciously simple and wonderfully effective at leveraging the dearth of hormones charging through my veins at that time.
Nice. So what even got you training at 14?
Um, that, that's a good question. We didn't really have too much of an influence within at least our school.
Okay.
We didn't. It was not a school where we were like, oh, we have training at this time and da da da. We had like 7, 8, 9, 10 guys who were kind of consistent in there all the time. A really tight bunch. And we would honestly just kind of hijack the weight room door open. We'd sneak in there. Sometimes we'd have one coach kind of supervising, but nobody who was like, here's the program, here's what we're doing, da 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 da. We just had a really close group of friends who wanted to kind of do something. And, oddly enough, I think my senior year we had 6 or 7 kids off my football team go D1, off of, historically not that prominent of a program. So definitely made waves through that. And honestly, I attribute it all to the training and to the fact that we just worked our ass off.
It's so interesting to me because my route to weightlifting or the barbell or training is almost the complete opposite. I was a small kid, grew up watching my high school football team and just wanted to be part of it so bad. And our high school football team actually had a really solid strength coach. In fact, the high school setup was a little different. It's Neshaminy High School out in just outside of Philadelphia. But the thing is, we have a huge high school, and the middle schools that all feed the high school, I think even now it's so set up where they're busing. So it's interesting where the middle school is 6th through 9th grade, and then the high school is just 10 through 12. But what they'll end up doing is busing those 9th graders, the freshmen, to the high school for weight room work and some stuff. So it's pretty set up, and it wasn't that dialed in when I was there. But I can remember as a 7th and 8th grader just having some good dads carpooling a bunch of us kids up to the high school to train, and they had a solid program. We all had the coach would hand us a piece of paper. We did the workout. They instructed the lifts. We warmed up together. We cooled down together. We sprinted afterwards. It was pretty dialed in. So I think it's interesting that you can get some similar results. And I have this philosophy that everything works and nothing does, and it just it has as much to do sometimes with just believing that what you're doing is going to work or just having buy-in on that. So interesting stuff, man. I think it's really cool. Thoughts on that? Thoughts on the difference where we can get a super structured program and then one where it's just kind of guys banging around together?
Sure. Man, so I in fact, I was at Summer Strong in South Carolina.
I used to live in Columbia, so I'm familiar with it.
Oh, right on. Anyway, I was there this past weekend. Mind-blowing experience. In fact, we have a blog post. I kind of recap the event. It'll come out tomorrow.
Fired up.
And God, who was it that talked about this? It was Adam Nelson. So Adam Nelson, gold medalist in the shot put, world champion, interesting man, just wonderful dude. He said this. He said the best program is the program you believe in.
Sure.
And so I think especially at the high school level, it's hard for me to sit here and say, we work with hundreds of high schools, it's hard for me to say there's one program that's superior than the other for high schools. I think there's a certain art to the high school weight room, but I also recognize having taught at the high school level and coached at the high school level, as well as played at the high school level, no one high school environment is the same. And a lot of from a programmatic standpoint, the important factors early on are not related to even, physiological adaptation, athlete readiness, etc. A lot are just logistical. What equipment do you got?
Sure.
How many people are in the facility at one time? What's the square footage? How many coaches do you have? Yada, yada. And I think that's where it becomes more of an art, is just kind of massaging those details and then bumping those against all the various factors related to, the teenage body. And on top of that, teenage psychology and the fact that they may or may not be engaged in what might be the most appropriate thing for them. It might be best for them to have a 3x5 linear progression. They might not want to do that.
So it's funny you talk about engaging the high school kiddo, and our high school did a really cool job of this. We had like the 600-pound. So our testing lifts were the power clean, the bench, and the back squat. And
Wait, you guys in bicep curl?
No, he didn't bicep curl for that. No, no, no. We were snatching. We were doing cool stuff. Plyometric work, different, incline bench, push pressing, some things like that. The guy was pretty smart, pretty dialed in. But when I would talk to him when I went back to talk to him about how he programmed it, because I was getting into high school coaching myself at the time, the first question he asked me was just like you're saying, what's the weight room look like? What do you have? Because our weight room was 2 rooms and there was a different flow, and he was bouncing the O lineman here, the D backs here, working it that way. But I want to get onto this topic of engaging this high school athlete, because our high school coach did a cool job of having different pound clubs. So you'd have like the 600-pound club, and if you made it, you'd take your picture, you'd put you in the 600-pound club, and you got a T-shirt. Then there was a 700-pound club, and it came to the point where if you weren't in the 1,000-pound club, and
you didn't have a shirt,
and if you weren't on the Redskin 11, which were pound for pound the 11 strongest kids in the weight room, you probably weren't going to earn a varsity spot. And it was a matter of if it just ended up being that way, where the best kids were the guys who were the gym rats. So what are some of the things that you've noticed growing up playing high school to get these kids engaged to train, or even working with some of these high schools? What are some tactics that maybe we could pass along to some coaches who are listening, just to engage the high school athlete or any athlete or any CrossFit gymmer?
Yeah, I would say, one, the topic rings true to my heart, having been a kind of coach and teacher at that level, so much so that I went ahead and I wrote a book on the topic called the Athlete Motivation Manifesto. So I think there's something like 30 odd strategies in there to jumpstart engagement. But really, I think it starts with, again, knowing your kids, knowing your own particular environment. And then from there, it's coming up with both extrinsic and intrinsic types of strategies that are going to kind of drive them to tap into their resources, those fuel reserves that they need to get into. So can be leaderboards. A lot of our platform does that, right? So, things like leaderboards, things like being able to see other people's profiles and check out kind of their lifts and be able to compare yourself against them to have context. But, even things that are completely free. What kind of music are you playing in your weight room?
That's right.
Again, T-shirts, probably the best incentive ever for any kid is T-shirt and pizza.
That's right.
So doesn't need to be expensive, doesn't need to be fancy. But I think having some of those things that are acknowledgments up top, you talk about like the Redskin 11, okay, top 11 guys. Hey, I'm running a football program with 160.
Yeah.
That's great for the top 11, but what do I do for the other 90%? And so I think it's not just basing everything off of absolute performance, but also off of progress. And that's where our system's so big, is we like to focus on acknowledging the progress, running regular testing cycles to show that, and then not to just have that data, but to enable a conversation between the coach and athlete around that progress to continue to fuel that athlete so they keep going forward and working hard.
It's so funny you bring up the extrinsic stuff. So I record in a closet beneath my stairwell. It's my own little Harry Potter room that I kind of put some padding up. And I got my high school football helmet here and my college football helmet here, and they're loaded with helmet stickers. And I can remember, even as, a hungover 21-year-old kid, my senior year in college, looking forward to the special teams meeting where we would get helmet stickers for what we did in special teams. You know what I mean? So it's so funny you bring that stuff up. So you mentioned your guys' platform and measuring progress and having your own leaderboard. Your platform's really cool, and I love it because it's this dual platform for coaches and athletes. You're providing some really neat training. What I'd like to talk about, since we're on this high school situation, we're talking about high school strength coaches, and it's getting bigger and bigger. I don't think it's, the more dialed in these high school programs are, it has to correlate to a bunch of success. I know you guys are following. There's a great blog series on your guys' website about this, bringing a team up, and I thought that was really cool. So talk to us about your engagement with high school coaches, what that's looking like. Are they just using the platform to track athletes' progress? Are they using the platform to find programming, or are they putting their own programming up on your platform?
Good questions, man, and it's all the above.
Awesome.
So kind of as I said, no high school looks the same. I'm going to reach back into history a little bit. We're going to look at kind of the evolution of strength and conditioning in general within this team sports setting, right? So it's early 1970s. Boyd Epley becomes their first legitimate kind of real strength coach in the college football ranks. Obviously, Boyd then kind of went into the NSCA, so on and so forth. But was at Nebraska. At that time, he's the only dude in the entire country who's really kind of legitimized in this space. From there, it starts to proliferate across the conference, eventually the entire country, where it's like, okay, now each school has kind of one strength coach. Then it became, okay, now let's split that thing off, and now let's have Olympic sports and let's have football separate, each having a strength coach. Then each of those got staffs. So they got interns, so on and so forth, strength and conditioning department. From there, it kind of evolved a step further. It became sports performance, right? So you have like directors of sports performance, and these people get a team underneath them. It's athletic trainers, it's speed specialists, mobility specialists, whatever. And then they take it a step further, and now we're in today's terms in the college/pro ranks, and we're looking at things like sports science. And they're starting to weave in, nutrition. They're starting to weave in advanced analytics, predictive analytics, whatever. And so you have kind of this evolution of strength and conditioning in general happening at this college and pro level. And now we're seeing that start to trickle down into the high school space. So honestly, when we even started this 4 or 5 years ago, it'd be very rare to find a high school strength coach whose full-time gig was just to be the strength coach. And I'm not talking, okay, I teach PE and I'm a strength coach. I'm talking just a purebred strength coach. That's all they do. Nowadays, we're seeing that more and more and more. We're seeing it not only at top programs, but we're seeing it kind of proliferate throughout the ranks, especially in places where sports are taken pretty seriously. So in the Texases of the world, the Californias, the Floridas, the Georgias, the whatever, the Carolinas, big time for sure.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a brief run-in with my wife's travel. We were in San Antonio for a while, and we moved from rural North Carolina kind of out there, and to see the difference in high school sports between what was going on in Northside Independent School District in San Antonio, Texas versus what I was experiencing in Little Lee County, North Carolina was unbelievable in terms of staffing, the money they put behind everything, stadiums, weight rooms. I mean, it was pretty impressive. It was pretty impressive.
Yeah. How old are your kids, Joe?
My kids?
Yeah.
Oh, I have a 5-year-old. What a question. I wasn't ready for it. Mason just turned 5. Charlie turns 4 in November, and Lucy turns 2 in September. So
that was actually your wife put me up to that. That was a test.
Oh, yeah?
You passed. No, I'm kidding. No, but I guess I'd turn the table on you, and I'd say, okay, well, project forward. What would you want for your kids to experience in their high school?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll be honest with you. I would like it to be an experience similar to mine. I mean, we were a pretty decent high school. We were a big high school, but it was just a structured program of people who cared about the kids. I mean, the one thing that I'd like to see for me, and especially in terms of high school coaches, it's funny. This is a great question because we were talking with Kelly Starrett recently, and he brought up this scenario where these pro strength coaches were just talking about, man, we don't get to spend enough with our guys to fix these certain things. Man, if we could get them in college. And then Kelly talks to the college coaches, and the college coaches are saying, man, we wish we could get them in high school, so on and so forth, all the way down to this elementary school level where they're not even doing PE so much. For me, I want my kiddos to be in a program where the coaches care about building good folks and good movement and good people. And hopefully winning is a byproduct of just hard, good work. Not work where you're trying. Obviously, we want to win. We want to score points. But I'd also like them to be in a program where scoring points in life is also emphasized. So.
Totally. Yeah, and I think the two go hand in hand.
Yeah.
That's why I got into this deal in the first place. I'm a big believer that, strength and conditioning, but even if we take it smaller than that, just like physical fitness is probably the greatest hard work framework on earth, because the chemical response that happens just as you start to do this stuff, it gives this immediate feedback that this shit works. If I work hard, good things happen.
Yeah, that's right.
Whereas you can go into a kid's math class and that kid can work hard for 2-3 days. He's not going to suddenly be awesome at math. Suddenly algebra doesn't make sense to him. Whereas if he goes to the gym 2-3 days, he feels that. It's real and it's tangible. And that feedback being so fast doesn't necessarily just teach him how to get big, strong, fast. It also just teaches them, if I work hard, I will get a result. And that thing spans, I think, any domain. And that's probably the best lesson we could be giving our kids through strength and conditioning, through training in general.
Very good. So let's get back to this high school model where you're helping out high school coaches. And we kind of asked the question about how are we doing it, what's going on. And coaches can use you guys to find programming. They can use it to just track athlete performance or a little of that. So let's go back to this high school coach, and if he walks into your website, what's it going to look like for him? And to me, it looks pretty easy. Was that part of it? It's like a dual site. So set us up for that coach who hasn't seen your site yet, and what your thought process was in developing this platform for them.
Sure. So again, it depends on the person. In general, it starts with, hey, sign up for a trial. They're free, 14 days, nothing to lose. And when they sign up with us, really, they're going to get concierge level type service. That's a big thing. You know, we're not just a software product. We're not just an app. We are a true service, and we take care of you. And so we start with an in-depth phone consultation. We're going to kind of listen to your needs. And if we're looking at the high school segment, it's probably 60-40. 60% being, hey, I just need the whole thing, soup to nuts, taken care of for me. I literally don't know the first thing about strength training, weightlifting, sports performance, or anything. I want a great program that I can be confident in delivering to my kids. I need assistance with how to get that out to them. I might even need help just like over the phone consulting on how to roll this thing out and kind of like configure my weight room so it's supported well. And then from there, they have all the tools they need to be able to assess their athlete progress, engage their athletes, even monitor and drive accountability for, are these kids doing it? Who's showing up, who's not, monitor participation. And then on the converse, there are schools, I'll look at, one of my buddies, Nick Garcia at Notre Dame High School in California. They have like a $350,000 equipment install in their weight room, and they have, I think, 8 to 12 iPads just circulating around the room to leverage our technology, which is phenomenal. They can work out literally 80 kids at a time, and every kid logs every rep and set and sees everything that they're doing in real time. And the kids also, because Nick's only one coach. Sure, he's, as well-funded as any program I've ever seen, but he's one coach. You got 80 kids at one time. Like, you show me a CrossFit coach who can manage that. And yet through our system, because there's videos, there's points performance, these kids can be somewhat autonomous. They're in the back corner of the room. Nick's helping one other kid on the other side of the room. They can pop open a video, watch that video. Okay, now I know what a real elevated split squat is. Now I can do this thing. And so it allows them to be far more efficient, crank through a ton of athletes, because that's the reality. Training in the high school environment is so far from perfect. There have to be some concessions made, and it's just picking which concessions do you make and how do you create the most efficient, most effective thing given the constraints of the situation. And ultimately, that's what true creativity is, right? It's saying, here's the constraints. Now, what can we get that's awesome given those constraints? And I think we're really close, if not right there with the solution.
So what I think's cool about your guys' platform, and I've tinkered with it through the Cal Strength Barbell WOD, where it's real user-friendly. Like you said, with the iPad app, you can kind of just, you go through it. If you want to see what the workout looks like or you want to see what the exercise looks like, there's a demo for everything right there. But I guess my question there would be, let's talk about the coach. Let's say you get the guy, brand new high school, poor high school, whatever, just a guy who maybe doesn't know the first thing about strength and conditioning, admittedly, and he wants to utilize your program. Is there ever a moment where you're cautious about handing the keys to this Porsche over to someone who doesn't know how to handle it? I guess the analogy might be, is there ever a thought that you're giving them enough information to maybe be dangerous? And what are you doing to curb that or to not allow it to happen?
Yeah, well, it depends what they're doing. Okay. So we are a true platform. So we like to say we're methodology agnostic. So it's not necessarily our content that these people are going to be getting. They're going to get content through our marketplace. So they can kind of select it more a la carte.
Okay.
So it'd be like, okay, from us, you're going to go buy the iPhone. But then if you want to listen to some music, you got to go buy some songs, and you get to pick songs that make sense for you.
Okay.
And so when coaches come to us, we're going to do a needs assessment and then kind of make recommendations. Hey, here's a program that we think would be really good for you. And if you have any questions, you can bounce those questions off the coach who wrote the program.
Very cool.
So we are, to that end, we're not playing the expert. We like to hold up the experts. So if there are CrossFit coaches, weightlifting coaches, sports performance coaches who want to sell their programs and extend their business through us, great. That's what we do really well. We pair those, what we call creators, with the instructor so that the performer and athlete gets what they need.
Awesome. So you bring up these experts that are in your guys' marketplace, and I guess the first place to utilize these experts is if you went into your website and you checked out the athletes tab, and you could go right into that marketplace. Talk to us about some of these experts. I know cruising it, we see Power Athlete HQ, guys like John Wellborn are promoting you guys. I mentioned Cal Strength. I know Travis Mash has a couple of programs up there. James Tatum is throwing some stuff up there with you guys. So talk to us about who you might recommend for high school coach who says, man, I'm scared to death of strength and conditioning, but I know how important it is. Who might you toss in their direction to check out on your marketplace?
Sure. Well, I think all the ones you mentioned, actually, or a lot of them, have high school options. I know Power Athlete sells a program called The Basics that's really nuts and bolts. Literally the name is The Basics.
Awesome.
And it's driven around linear progression, so it kind of auto-regulates load for the athletes. It's well written, lots of instruction incorporated, and it's manageable. It's like, I think, 2-3 days a week. So it's something that coaches can easily implement. Cal Strength just came out with a football program called Ground Force that is kind of similar. I think they beta tested that thing at a local high school to nail down the exact environment and really figure that thing out. So that's a solid program. One that probably, 150 high schools use through us is called the Explosive Athlete Program.
Sure.
And the Explosive Athlete Program is run by a coach by the name of Matt Couch from University of San Diego. And that program is really cool because it went through a ton of iterations. It's changed time and time again based on the feedback from every one of those high schools. And so if you want a program that's literally, from start to finish, 50 minutes exactly, taps into almost every relevant energy system, incorporates mobility as homework, and also has some speed and conditioning components, that's a pretty great one as well.
Thank you so much, gang, for tuning into today's episode of the Doc and Jock Podcast. We hope you're enjoying the topic of the day or the interview. If you are, please head on over to iTunes and review it and let us know so we can either talk about that topic again or bring that guest back on. Also, guys, while you're at it, post a question, and then Dr. Danny and I can tackle that question on a Friday short. The topic could be mobility, weightlifting, motivation, anything in between. Dr. Danny and I will tackle that. It's a great service to us, a great service to you. You get some knowledge, we get a bump in the standings, and we really appreciate that. Also, guys, we'd appreciate your support on all the social media outlets. Check out @Doc and Jock on Instagram and @Doc and Jock on the Twitter feed. Also, guys, like, share the Facebook page, and visit www.docandjock.com. You'll notice, guys, we're in the middle of a rebrand. We've changed the badge, we've changed the logo. We are overhauling the website, and we'd love to know your thoughts on that. Thank you, guys, for tuning into the Doc and Jock Podcast. And remember, if you have a body, you are an athlete. Fired up. So we're kind of running through the Train Heroic platform with CEO and founder Ben Crookston, and we're kind of running through some scenarios for coaches. It seems like it's really cool where a coach can get on there if he wants to expand his business, and if coach wants to get on there and coach his kiddos and streamline that process, it's all functional there. So I got one. So, myself, when I got into it, I wanted to check out some weightlifting programming on my own. That was easy. I kind of have a background in training, coaching, so I kind of knew where I wanted to be coming off of CrossFit, wanted to spend some time with weightlifting. Is your platform, let's say, new athlete, guy doesn't really know what the heck he wants to do, but he came across the platform. How might they streamline their process into picking? To me, it's almost like you go to Baskin Robbins and it's like, oh my God, what do I do?
Yeah,
there's so much. So how might someone who doesn't really have that any background but wants to kind of, I'm stuck with training on my own, I want to train on my own, how might they navigate the marketplace to make a good decision?
Sure. So there's pretty lightweight filters. So if you're
Okay.
searching by price, that's one way to do it. I wouldn't recommend searching only by price. I'd probably look at what are your goals. So what sport are you training for, or what's your focus? And then I might look at things like popularity and how many people are doing this thing, and what's relevant. To be totally honest, that's something we're looking to expand on pretty deeply within the next 12 months. So going from just, okay, here's some lightweight filters to, can we build in a recommendation engine that we ask some questions, from the user, and that user tells us a little bit of information. We're able to surface to them the most relevant programs within our marketplace, because, it's a kind of funny deal. We started that thing, 1 year ago. And at the time it was 3 programs, and we had, 5 people in our company.
Sure.
And then suddenly it's, hundreds and hundreds of programs, and we have 15 people, and we'll have 25 by the end of the year. And so it's one of those things, you build it, and then you're like, man, see if people go to this thing and use this thing before we dump a bunch of dough into it. And sure as shit, they are. And so now it's kind of our responsibility to take, pull the reins back a little bit, study user behavior, and see how can we serve these people better so they're getting not just kind of what they're looking for, but exactly what they're looking for. And we can have not only the right program for them, but also the exact amount of feedback they need in pursuit of that program so they're hitting their goals.
Very cool. So talk to us about the growth. I mean, you mentioned that it just kind of blew up. It's going, you go from, how many programs were on it in the beginning? You said 3 or 5?
Yeah. I mean, we started out with just, I think Cal Strength, and Power Athlete. And I think Dusty Highland was in there. Okay. And then we got Waxman's Gym jumped in. Who are some of the early ones? Zach Evanesh was pretty early. Brandon Lilly was kind of early. But yeah, I mean, it just kind of got a little bigger. And suddenly, now I think there's like 350 in there.
What do you attribute the growth to? Is it people want to play with the cool kids, great programming, all of the above? I mean, talk to us about maybe more specifically maybe start with the origin of your plan to, obviously you built this model with a big purpose, and it looks to me that purpose is you're starting to see it. You're starting to complete your mission where you're connecting, coaches and athletes anytime, anywhere. So with that said, what was the initial thought between, to start it and grow it?
Sure.
I mean, is it just to, contact coaches and let them do their thing? So talk to us about your guys' startup with this.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a funny deal. When you start a startup, I think you sort of know what it's going to be.
Okay.
From a business model perspective, oddly enough, we kind of knew exactly what it was going to be. We, went right and left, and, there were some fits and spurts along the way where we're like, I'm not sure this is it. But actually it is. It's pretty much, I wrote the business plan 5 years ago, and oddly enough, as ineffective as most business plans are, that thing is pretty tried and true to what we're doing from a concept perspective. But from a mission perspective, we've refined that thing so much to the point where now all we're focused on is helping people be their best. It's that simple. Be your best. That's all we're about. And so I think when we look at it through that lens, you mentioned, you're to the point where you've almost realized your mission. Yeah. With what we're doing in such a broad mission statement, it's almost impossible for us to realize our mission or complete our mission. That's the exciting part to us is that there will always be more ways we can help people be their best. There will always be more ways we can help coaches coach better. There will always be more ways we can help athletes reach their goals, and not just reach their goals that they've set for themselves, but reach the goal that the universe has theoretically set for them by just saying, here's who you are. Here's your genetic lot. Here's your psychological lot, all this stuff. Here's your potential. Let's help you push past your potential and push past possible and do things you didn't think you could do. So that's really I think the scope of our mission. And I guess from a growth standpoint, I think that's an exciting thing to a lot of people. So it's an exciting thing to our team members internally, because that's a mission a lot of people can stand behind. It'd be one thing if we were just like a workout tracking thing. I'm like, when I hear that, I almost throw up. Like, workout tracking, what the F is the point of workout tracking?
Sure.
If we're just, methodically doing this, we may as well be Excel and be completely faceless. Like, we want to help people be better. We don't want to just collect data. We want to do something with the data. We want to make sure that those numbers count. We don't want to be just about data either. We want to also be about content and world-class programs and instruction and expertise, and community, the things that make you feel good, because those things, they help you be better. And so internally, I think it's a really attractive thing. Externally, I think, a lot of people are like, like yourself. Hey, I checked this thing out because I was following this coach at Cal Strength, thought he was cool, want to see what his methods look like, and, I want to get a look under the curtain. And so maybe come in and find it that way. Other coaches are like, hey, my gym's a mess, and I just got to find a way to organize this thing and get my programming together so that it runs a little bit tighter and my athletes are more engaged. They might come to us for that. And so I think it goes back to having a very flexible platform that is specifically designed to support the needs of the coach first, knowing that part of the coach's needs are to engage their athletes and push their goals. But we focus first on the coach. We make sure that we're building tools for them. And I think, probably our strongest marketing is just word of mouth and people having a good experience with not just the product, because at times, truthfully, the product's been suspect. I'll be the first to admit it. Even where it is today, I'd be like, hey, I'd give us a C+, maybe. I can tell you by the end of the year, we'll be like a B+, and by the beginning of next year, a strong A-. But that's just me knowing full well what we have on the roadmap, the talent and the caliber of people we're bringing in to work on this thing, and the passion they have behind them. And the fact that, like, we're not building things in a vacuum. We build them strictly on the basis of not only feedback from coaches, but also working in real time with coaches, because we're coaches ourselves.
So that original group that you popped in, I mean, they're guys who, I've spoken with Coach Spitz on the phone. I've done John's course. He's, these guys, and we've interviewed Zach Evanesh and a couple of the other guys on your platform. These are your alpha males, your coaches who are strong-willed. So what's it like, that relationship, working with them and getting feedback from them? And I know recently you guys, right around the Open, did a really cool thing with John Wellborn, collaborating with him for open workout strategy. So talk to us about the feedback you get from them and how quick you are to take the feedback, and then maybe even a quick story where the coach says, hey, I'd like you to do this, but in your mind, well, that doesn't work for the total brand. Does that ever happen when things, maybe you don't agree?
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think you're right in that there are really strong personalities at the top end of coaching, and we deal with them all, right? And I think partially we're gluttons for punishment, and that's what we seek out. Sure. But those are the people that we look up to. They are, to some extent, our models. Because we do believe so much in the coach, and we're looking for the top experts to teach us what to do. And like any coaching moment, sometimes that feedback hurts. Sometimes you're like, shit, we're not where we thought we were. Sure. I thought I was a little further down the path than I am. Okay. But I think if this thing was driven on anything other than passion, we would have quit a long time ago, and we would have packed our shit in after some of that feedback came in, right? Especially early on. But the reality is, we care about this thing so much that we are able to take that feedback and apply it, because we're not, I talk about this all the time. It's like, are you looking for feedback, or are you looking for compliments?
Sure, like
a lot of people are like, hey, give me some feedback on this. And you're like, do you want feedback, or do you want a compliment? And the reality is, I think at our company, we want feedback. We are a feedback organization. It's built into our DNA. We want to hear the ugly stuff so that we can get better, because if we don't hear that, we can't improve. And so, I mean, it's definitely at times tough. You got to check the ego at the door. But in the long run, it's better and better. And I think truthfully, having gone through some really ugly, tough times with some of our top partners, that's where you also build that trust, and that's where you build a relationship, because we are willing to go that extra mile, the extra 10 for our customers.
Very cool. It's funny you bring up, are you looking for real feedback, or you just looking for agreement with you, or some sort of a compliment, right? So I know not to bring in your personal life, but you live with your girlfriend. You're not married yet, so that's something that's something that gets interesting as marriage becomes maybe more of a something that might happen in your life. But I love my wife. I'll just say that. But we can have those conversations where it's like, listen, honey, do you really want my opinion, or are you just looking for me to say that dress looks nice? So interestingly enough, but really cool stuff. So you are an interesting cat, man. It seems like you guys have really developed a really interesting platform where it's just growing, and I'm interested to see how the marketplace expands and what goes on with it. So I'd like to go a little bit back into you, because what's cool about this product is, and talking with you, you're a smart guy. This is like what most coaches would, it's almost a godsend, right? Where it's like, man, if I'm the coach, I don't have to worry about some of the goofy back-end stuff. But to develop that back-end stuff couldn't have been easy. So talk to us about your background outside of training that helped you kind of see this vision come to life, because it's one thing to meet the idea fairy. It's another thing to actually execute this, and it takes an interesting skill set to, in my mind, build a platform and work with this broad audience that you have.
Yeah. So, God, my background is weird. I think in my bio it says something about like I took the sampler plate off the career menu or something.
Yeah, I love that. Teach, write, coach.
That. But I mean, that what I've found in reflection, you never know what's going to prepare you in life for what, until you're there. And sometimes I'll pause and I'm like, holy shit, that weird little skill that I learned when I was 16, when I was doing this thing, I use that right now.
Yeah.
And there have been a lot of times where I've just learned out of necessity, and sometimes out of curiosity, and all of those things have come to fruition and enabled us to do this. I don't have a technology background at all. So I was right out of college, I got into the Teach for America program. I taught in low-income high schools. I was passionate about that and wanted to use that as a platform at the time that, one, I wanted to gain perspective about the world and see some of the fundamental issues going on in society. And two, I actually thought I could kind of make a small dent at a micro level in what we were doing. And so I did that for a few years, learned a ton about human development. And I'd always been into human performance, myself, just being kind of a test dummy for both the training methods and otherwise. But it doesn't stop kind of at the physical side for me. I've just been a naturally curious person. In fact, I was probably not that physically gifted, especially on the speed side of things or technique side of things growing up. My parents are wonderful people, hardworking folks, both very strong people, but the slowest white folk you could ever come from. Okay. And so, having a role model of Barry Sanders growing up, I wasn't necessarily destined to be an NFL running back, though I wanted to. Sure. And so training was the thing that got me there. Training took me from being, I think it was like the 9th fastest kid on my high school football team my freshman year. My senior year, I was the 9th fastest kid in the country at my position. Awesome. And so the only reason I got that was not natural ability. It was just literally grunt work and reasonably smart training in hindsight. But apart from that, probably my best natural gift, which is probably the least used, is actually art. So growing up, I could draw and paint, and I used to sell art in college. And so I just have a really random background. I majored in both business and creative writing. I worked in Hollywood for a couple years in college. So I've done a lot of random stuff, and it all kind of came together once we started the company because, our original product, I worked on the designs all the time. I was doing the layouts, the UI stuff, all the marketing stuff. I wrote every line of copy, took all the pictures, did all the stuff because I knew photography, knew video, knew how to write copy, and I had all that experience. And the business stuff, I had started an organization in college. We raised a bunch of money in college, yada, yada, yada. I knew how to fundraise, knew how to manage, had a lot of that experience. And then the training side, I had just learned experientially and also was super lucky to be surrounded by just world-class people. So in college, our strength coach, we had 2 world-class strength coaches at USD. One was a guy by the name of Shannon Turley, who is at Stanford now. Won strength coach of the year, I believe, in 2013. And then another guy, Stefan Roche, totally different methodology and philosophy, who is part of the CrossFit headquarters staff. And so I got to see both the sports performance world as well as the CrossFit world, even back then in college, when this is, 2006, 7, when CrossFit's not like a big thing.
Sure.
And sports performance is honestly just starting. And so we were kind of there. That was our education. Those are our mentors. And those are the people who influence both the product that we design, but also the philosophy and the underpinning of kind of what we stand for. And so I don't know how much of that.
No, I think it's great that you put that out there because again, the product's really cool because you go onto it and it's really, you've developed this awesome tool where it's helpful to both, you can have usually, I'm looking back to my high school coaching days where, you go to a football coach's clinic, which is built just for the high school football coach, right? There's the DVDs, the books, you can get some equipment, there's all types of talks for the coach, to help the program. But, it's not a place where maybe the high school athlete could walk in and have a lot of use there. So it's interesting to me that you've found a way to bring all of this together and it coexists happily. So that's what I was trying to get at. Like, how did you pull it off? Because it's such a daunting. You'd look at it. Well, how am I going to connect all this? And some people might not be able to pull it off. In fact, I think it would require someone with a diverse background like yours. So you said a couple things there. I don't want to go too far off in the woods here on this, but what is this work in Hollywood that happened? I wouldn't have found that. What were you doing over there?
So that sounds probably far more glamorous than it was. Yeah. But I was a reader and kind of like script editor for.
I heard that's a terrible job.
It is the worst of all jobs. You're basically dumped a pile of scripts on your desk, maybe 6, 7 a day. Then you got to go read them all and write a report on each one. It's like doing a shitload of book reports for bad books because you reject 99 out of 100 scripts that come in the door.
Now, you had to have come across some amazingly awful storylines. Like, I watched, what did I try to watch the other day? Barbarella. And you look at some of these Capcom crazy movies that were coming out. Can you maybe pass along, without giving the title, maybe the worst storyline you came across?
Man, I think there was one about a time traveling amateur pornographer. That was pretty weird.
Awesome.
That was a pretty obtuse plot line. But I was also fortunate enough to work on some really cool stuff. I worked on the Harry Potter series.
Oh, very cool.
I Am Legend.
Awesome.
Yes Man. So there were a few gems amongst the sea of bullshit. But yeah, I mean, more than anything, I think it just teaches you to be very detailed. And just seeing that amount of stories just proves out, I think, the power of narrative, the power of storytelling in general, which is a skill that honestly is a lost art in so many worlds. And it applies to nearly every domain that it's pretty tough for me to say my English degree was an effective use of time.
Sure. Well, do you think that the storytelling's a lost art, or maybe just the way you have to present the story is just different now? Because you look at, maybe gone are the days of like these epic historical recounts. You know, the War and Peace. I think we're past the generations coming up aren't going to sit down and read War and Peace, but man, if you get them on the right kind of political serial that's, you know, a couple minutes but produced well, they might get it. So how much do you think that the storytelling, but first just trying to, again, like we talked about, going back to the original point, you know, captivating or engaging that high school football audience. It's the same thing with trying to captivate this, man, it's not even the MTV generation now. It's like the, you know, it's the Instagram, it's the Snapchat generation.
Snapchat generation, man. Yeah, I don't want to be like the old codger who says this stuff sucks, because it's certainly not true. I would say we are in the golden era of television right now. You know, the storytelling that's happening there is best in class, and quite frankly, there's more data about what makes a good story today than there's ever been before.
Yeah, it's great. You bring that up in your bio. It says AmRamping Premium Television.
Yeah.
So talk to me about, are you talking about like House of Cards, Game of Thrones style stuff?
Mean, HBO, Netflix. And I think if you look at the digital side of things, those, you know, prior to that, we operated totally off of our instincts when writing stories. Sure, there were like some clear frameworks out there. There's Sid Field, there's, you know, Joseph Campbell, there's whatever that we want to follow from a kind of narrative influence perspective. But now today, those companies, Netflix, HBO, that are purely leaning on digital have more data about where people drop off in a story. You know, what minute did they stop watching? They have such an unfair competitive advantage for creating good content that's never existed before.
Interesting.
And so their ability to replicate those models over and over and over such that people just tune in perpetuity is almost unfair, to the point where we're like effectively guaranteeing a full generation of couch potatoes. But I guess where I said, you know, storytelling is a lost art, I don't think it is at the extremes. No different than, you know, anything else in America is a lost art at the extremes. There are more wealthy people, or wealthier people, let's correct that, today than ever before.
Sure.
You know, so the 1% of storytellers, better than ever before. I would say they could go toe to toe with the Mark Twains and anybody else. But the middle of people who just should be able to tell stories so they can actually perform a general sales job, marketing job, or actually just convince their kids that not smoking drugs is a good idea with a good story.
Or just pass down some family history. I mean, I've run into Polish, because there's an interesting Polish community not too far from me where you can get some really good kielbasa, and it's naturally smoked. And, you know, you go into this community and they're still speaking Polish. And my grandparents did a very poor job of passing that language on, to the point where I don't know a single Polish word. And a lot of that has to do with just not sitting around talking to each other anymore. So really interesting stuff, man. I think it's really cool. So with that in mind, the last thing I want to get into you about is you know, pre-show we talked about this deliberate practice book that you're getting into. And, you know, you talked about your book, The Athlete's Motivational Manifesto. You're obviously, you know, you're just a prolific doer, it seems like, between the training, the schools, you know, what you're doing with this crazy platform. But you're also putting out great content. And I guess your latest one is this deliberate practice book. So get into us about what the purpose of it is, where folks can find it, and what kind of put you on the path to writing this, and why.
Cool. So if you just, people just shoot over to our blog. It's blog.trainheroic.com. I think it's right now maybe the first few things that come up. But the book's called Lift. Subtitle, I think, is Correct Your Coaching and Reach Past Possible with Deliberate Practice. And ultimately, that was a challenge in and of itself. How do you come up with a sexy title about practice, which is inherently the least sexy thing in the world?
You need Allen Iverson involved, I'd imagine.
Yes, just get some cornrows and some hip hop on the front, and we're set. But yeah, the book really was created, I think, out of need, because the more and more we work with coaches, you know, yes, part of it is about the technology to create efficiencies and make their jobs easier and so on and so forth, drive engagement. But so much of it too is just, how do we pass down this craft of coaching?
Sure,
and how do we help people learn from the absolute top experts? You know, kind of figure out what are the common denominators within their practice, and how do we give those to the rest of coaches so that they can enable and empower their athletes to have better outcomes. And so I think, really what it is we look at 4 key areas with deliberate practice. We look at setting goals. We look at delivering expert instruction. We look at creating structured training. And then we look at providing immediate feedback. And we look at each one on both a macro and a micro level. So I guess what I mean by that would be, let's talk about goal setting. So Joe, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think goal setting? Go.
Well, I think of easy, right? You need to make it measurable.
Great.
Not just throwing spaghetti at a wall and hoping it happens. So, I want to increase my total by 5 kilos in the next 6 months.
Awesome. So we would call that a macro goal.
Got it.
6-month goal, right? Pretty heady stuff. So the example that we work to do with the book is we try to drive people to focus on the micro. So don't think 6 months, and I'm not even talking 1 week, I'm not talking 1 day. I'm talking about what is the goal for this exercise this minute? How often are you setting those types of goals with your athletes? And that's where you can make the impact. It's, because if we're talking about shooting something off that's 400 yards off in the distance, we don't have a shot in hell of hitting that thing, But if I'm shooting a target that's 10 feet away from me, I can nail that thing time and time again.
Very
and if we do that,
it kind of reminds me of there's a Josh Waitskin book about he goes into the art of learning and discusses a ton about punching without punching. And to me, I've kind of developed that into a whole weightlifting thought where can you lift without lifting? And for me, that breaks it down to I do a ton of with my especially early lifters segmenting the lifts and really going over each part. Yeah, and then blending them together slowly. So no, I think that's really cool, and I think for even high school coaches too, or any coach who maybe looks at a blank canvas and they're like, man, how do I accomplish all of this, right? And you hear more and more from these guys who focus. It's it's zeroing that focus into your niche, and then expanding out. So I think that's interesting.
Yeah. So. The book's free, free download. Go over to the website, go grab it.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Fired up, dude.
If you hate the thing, ben@trainheroic.com. Send me your feedback. But here's the jam. You can't just send it and say, Ben, you suck. You have to say why.
Got it.
And you have to give me one thing I could work on. Because like you, we're trying to get better every day.
Nah, dude, I think it's really cool. I think folks who check this out, I think they'll be intrigued by you. I think they'll be intrigued by your platform. It's really cool to chat with you, man. It's cool to talk with a smart guy about more. You look at this Train Heroic platform and you can think it's just kind of meatheady, bang the barbell stuff around. But there's some real thought and there's a real mission behind this. And, man, I'm pretty fired up to have chatted with you about all this. And before we let you go, you mentioned where to reach you. Give some folks some details about how they can get involved with Train Heroic, where they can find it. The best place to reach you. Are you guys on all the social media places? And really just take the floor here, and anything we haven't covered about Train Heroic, throw it on some folks.
Cool. Yeah, so I would say if you want to get involved, if you're a coach, if you're an athlete, doesn't matter. Head over to trainheroic.com. We got something for you. If you're a coach, click Start Coaching. Sign up for a 14-day trial. We will do a full consult with you and see if there's a fit. A lot of times there's not, but a lot of times there is. So I'd start there, and then if you're an athlete, go find a great program, find something in the marketplace, get involved in a community, and more than anything, find a coach. Do something so you can actually achieve your goals. I think that would be the best advice I could offer. We're on all the social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever. Go ahead. We're always putting out great content and stuff that we hope to help you guys out with.
Yeah, because the content's not to go off another point here. The content's not just from your Train Heroic staff. I mean, we've recently interviewed Jared Moon. A lot of your contributors are on your blog. So, I mean, it's a great hub for just anyone interested in strength and conditioning. So I'd advise you check it out. And kind of our tagline here, Ben, is if you have a body, you're an athlete. And I think that anybody who's interested in anything athletic or improving that body, I think if they head over to Train Heroic, I think they'll be happily surprised what they find. So hopefully we expose our audience to this and they pop on over. We'll tell them to send we'll tell them that Doc and Jock sent them, and we'll tell our folks to be nice to you when they criticize this lift book. But I really hope people take advantage of it, because it is a pretty cool resource. I'm going to download it tonight and probably start paging through it, and I'm going to shoot you something on it. But we appreciate you, man. Thanks for your time. Take care of the. Oh yeah, the last thing I didn't get on Gibson. Gibson's your maniac puppy who collects your delinquent rent, right?
He is our bill collector, man.
Yeah.
So if you have an invoice outstanding, your credit card defaulted, this dude's coming for you. In fact, he's looking at me right now with eyes of hatred, because I haven't taken him for a walk. I haven't done anything for him.
Nice.
So as soon as I jump off this, 10 to the pooch.
Yeah, I think for folks who are listening, we probably should have prefaced the talk with it. But I think his tail was wagging here and there, making some great noises. But hey, Ben, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Joe.
And
it's been a pleasure.
I'll take care.
What's up, guys? Doc Danny here with the Doc and Jock Podcast, and I want to take a couple seconds to talk to you about one of our sponsors, and that is Mobility Wad. If you don't know what Mobility Wad is, then you need to go check them out, because it's something that's dramatically changed the way that I work with people, the way that people treat themselves, and the way that we share information about the human body and be able to perform basic human maintenance on your body. And what does that mean? That means learn how to chip away at these little problems that we all develop every day so that they don't become a big problem that eventually you have to see someone like me for or have surgery for. And this is what Mobility Wad does, and I think it's the coolest part about it. If you go to mobilitywad.com, the cool thing is they've got case studies, they've got daily programming of mobility work that you can do, and there's some awesome webinars in there if you want to learn more in-depth information on the shoulder, the lower back, the knee, the foot and ankle. There's just so much content there that's so helpful. It's crazy to think that it's less than $8 a month. So guys, check it out, mobilitywad.com. You will not regret it.